Hi, this is Roger Green, host of the Surfing the NASH Tsunami podcast. This weekend, we are offering 5 conversations from Season 3, Episode 43, our look at the future of combination therapies, plus, from the more recent vault, a section of a May 2022 episode on NASH drug development that presages the topics we discuss in this week's episode. After I share the history of this episode, lead author and principal investigator Naim discusses the rationale for the study. He starts by noting that while semaglutide has an array of benefits for NASH patients, it has not demonstrated anti-fibrotic effects, which led to a search for combination therapies that would improve sema's anti-fibrotic profile. He then discusses the trial and its results in some detail. When he concludes, Jorn Schattenberg points out that one benefit of multiple modes of action is the use of lower doses of each agent, which can create a superior safety profile when compared to what high-dose monotherapy would do. Next, Louise Campbell asks how the duration of study might affect results, and Mazen Noureddin provides an answer. After that, Mazen makes one more point. As an open-label study with no placebo arm, this might not be the preferred way to evaluate unapproved therapies, but it is likely to become a dominant design once drugs are approved for NASH, and we are seeking combination therapies atop an already approved backbone agent. This conversation considers in broad terms the practical, clinical, and commercial issues that will frame the future of frontline drug development for the entire range of NASH patients, focusing both on drugs and, in a sense, diagnostics. It leaves a great deal for all of us to ponder. So sit back, listen, enjoy, learn, and when you're done, join the dialogue on our LinkedIn and Facebook discussion groups. The subject for this podcast popped up, I think, in May, originally, when the online version of the paper that Hepatology actually printed, I think this is printing this week, September 1st episode, if I'm reading that right, in JHEP? In JHEP, that's right, which was a paper taking a look at the combination therapy of semaglutide, cilofexor, firsocostat. Naim has mentioned that on this podcast, I think, once or twice since, or in some setting with me. It might be a podcast because it's the only time we've recorded since then. And it's an exciting and interesting paper, and I think it speaks to an issue we've talked about a couple of times, which is different ways to think about combination therapies, not being what they were in the first place, which is if 2 drugs fail in mono, can I put them together in combo, and turning into, okay, what are all the different things that we want to do? So I'm hoping, with the aid of first author Dr. Al-Khoury and last author Dr. Noureddin, if I got the orders right on that, and everybody, that we can go through the thinking behind how do you think about which drugs belong together in combination. What can we learn about that from how this study got constructed, and then the results of this study and what you think it portends for the future. So Naim or Mazen, take your pick. Let's start on how did all this start, and where did you start on it?
Mazen Noureddin.
I'll let Naim take the leading role as he's the PI of the study, and I want to remind everyone of his excellent presentation. I think it was during ASLD, Naim, right? Virtual one, and
yeah,
I was very impressed the way you handled the questions, actually.
Naim Al-Khoury.
Thank you, my dear friend. So Roger, I presented this at ASLD 2020. It took us a while to get this published, but I'll give you some of the background. Obviously, as you mentioned, it's a combination 3 medications: semaglutide, which everyone knows, GLP-1 agonist, cilofexor, which is an FXR agonist, kind of similar to obeticholic acid, and then firsocostat, which is what we call de novo lipogenesis inhibitor. So we had the phase 2b with the semaglutide alone that showed great efficacy in terms of NASH resolution in 59%. When we think about NASH drugs, we're not just thinking about hepatic endpoints, we're also thinking about the effects on metabolic syndrome and cardiovascular outcomes. And semaglutide hits every point. I mean, patients lose weight, they improve dyslipidemia, they improve their A1C, insulin sensitivity, and they have, proven cardiovascular outcomes, especially in patients with type 2 diabetes. So semaglutide is a great medicine, but the only missing piece was really efficacy on fibrosis regression. And this has been the Achilles heel. And the fact that, the mechanism of improvement is related to weight loss, and not everyone loses weight on GLP-1 agonists. This is the rationale why we needed to look into combination therapy with semaglutide, and we needed medications that have anti-fibrotic effects. So Gilead had a program that had 3 drugs in it. Selonsertib, which was not not effective, but the other two drugs were cilofexor and firsocostat. And we had the Atlas trial that included about 400 patients, all biopsy-proven disease with F3, F4. And in that trial, we noticed that if you look at the combination of firsocostat plus cilofexor, there was regression of fibrosis by one stage in about 21% of patients, and in the placebo arm, it was 11%. Now, this did not meet statistical significance just because the study was underpowered and we had arms with selonsertib that had no efficacy. So it was really hard to make conclusive arguments that this combination by itself is going to work. But that was a really high-risk patient population because 56% had cirrhosis. And to see fibrosis regression in 21%, in my mind, this is very clinically meaningful. So this was the rationale why to use the cilofexor firsocostat plus semaglutide. And then we designed the study, and I'm happy to go through the protocol quickly and maybe give like an overview of the top line results. But this was everyone received semaglutide, so there was no pure placebo because we wanted to show that the combination had added benefit on top of semaglutide alone. So the first arm was semaglutide, and then we had semaglutide plus firsocostat alone, semaglutide plus cilofexor low dose 30 milligrams, semaglutide with high dose cilofexor 100 milligrams, and then we did the triple combination therapy, so semaglutide, firsocostat, and cilofexor. And we included patients with biopsy-proven NASH, F2, F3, or a non-invasive way to diagnose NASH, which was basically MRI-PDFF more than 10% plus liver stiffness more than 7 kPa. And we did not want to include cirrhotics in the study, so we used the fibro test less than 0.75 to exclude cirrhotic patients. And patients were treated for 6 months, 24 weeks, so a relatively short term. And not to get into too many details, but in terms of weight loss, the weight loss was similar across the groups. Everyone lost about 7 to 8%. But when we looked at MRI-PDFF improvement, we noticed the highest reduction was with the triple combination therapy, so simafir, cilofexor. And if you look at that 30% relative reduction from baseline, which has been used to predict histologic improvement, 92% achieved that with the triple combination therapy versus 80% with semaglutide. And then we even raised the bar, so we said, okay, how many achieved more than 50% reduction from baseline in terms of liver fat on PDFF? And that was achieved in 85% with the triple combination compared to 40% with semaglutide. And then we took it even to 70% relative reduction, and that was about 1/3 of patients with triple combination versus only 7% with semaglutide. So we see clear evidence that the triple combination has added benefit. And then we also saw a reduction in ALT, AST. There was some reduction also in CK18, cytokeratin 18, biomarker of hepatocyte apoptosis. And then we also looked at liver stiffness on FibroScan, and we used a 25% reduction from baseline, and we showed that about 50% achieved this with the triple combination compared to about 35% with semaglutide monotherapy. And then we also looked at the FAST score that includes CAP for liver steatosis, liver stiffness for fibrosis, and AST for inflammation. And we showed reduction in the FAST score at 0.39. Remember, the FAST goes from 0 to 1. So, this is about 30% reduction compared to only 0.19 with semaglutide monotherapy. So again, indicating that potentially the triple combination has higher efficacy. The other thing we looked at was also how did semaglutide help with some of the liabilities that cilofexor and firsocostat have. Firsocostat can increase your triglycerides, and cilofexor can increase your LDL. And we noticed that we mitigated these adverse events by adding semaglutide. And this is one other angle we think about combination therapy. In addition to increasing efficacy, can we mitigate some of the concerning adverse events? So we feel like this combination is hitting on both, increasing efficacy, but also mitigating some of the dyslipidemia issues that we have with firsocostat and cilofexor. So sorry for taking too long, but I've been very involved in this study. This is like my baby, so just wanted to give you the historic background and the overall top-line results.
So first of all, Naim, that wasn't long at all, and that was fantastic. Let me offer other people questions before I ask any. Go ahead. Questions?
Jörn Schattenberg.
Yeah, congratulations, Naim and Mazen. I think an outstanding study, really down the line of combining multiple MOAs to increase the efficacy, as you nicely detailed, on a lot of NITs. But something that was very interesting to me me is that you mentioned toward the end was that the safety concerns you might get from the addition of multiple drugs could even be a little bit dampened when you compare it to the individual drugs. So I think this is very appealing when we consider that each drug has a rationale to be used in NAFLD, and each drug has side effects. And it was reassuring that the lower drug, the lower concentration of the FXR, which gives us side effects in terms of, pruritus potentially or LDL, could be used, and that these changes were even decreased. So I think that's a very reassuring, and to me, that's the powerful message out of this. I think it's difficult to really deep dive into the efficacy differences based on the small groups and the multiple comparisons, but really the strong message is you can combine and you can mitigate the safety that comes up. That was my take, and congratulations again. I think that's really a strong way forward.
Louise, you have anything, or Mazen, you have anything you want to add about the paper?
Louise Campbell.
No, I'd just echo Sean. Congratulations, guys, on that paper. It seemed a wonderful read and some great information coming out. As Sean said, it's encouraging to know that the side effect profile, although they were there, they seem to be dampened down. That's what patients want. I think, Naim, you mentioned that it was a relatively short study. Is there any chance that these drugs may wane over time, or how long the proposed treatments would be? Because they did seem very efficacious, certainly in the combinations.
I can take a shot at this. I want to thank Louise and the Matt Damon of NASH for their comments. Actually, the first comment I want to make in terms of the duration of study, I think the study still could have shown also more positive results if it extended beyond the duration. Because as you know, SEMA is a titration up, and it takes about 16 weekish to titrate. So you can argue that you barely reach the therapeutic dose that it's going to be used for. So this is one. On the other hand, as Naim mentioned, there was a significant effect on reduction of the fat. So at one point, it's going to continue to peak, and then you are not going to have much more fat to melt, if you want to say, and the effects will be on inflammation and fibrosis, which we thought that these drugs or the other mechanisms added, not saying that SEMA doesn't do that. I think it will if you use it for a good duration of time. So this is one. I also have a comment on the trial itself and its importance. Well, you can say this is open label, there's no placebo arm, there's no biopsy. But if you really look at it from future standpoint, let's think about it in a way that SEMA was approved. Let's say, we think resmetirom is going to be approved first, but let's say SEMA is the first drug that is approved on the market. Let's say now we are an award beyond the liver biopsy. That what future clinical trials might look like. A drug that is efficacious, and now you're adding to it and using NITs to see improvement in the fat, fibrosis, and inflammation beyond liver biopsy. So I think this design will not be foreign in the future, will not be inadequate. Rather, it might become the standard of care for NASH clinical trials, including and hopefully registration clinical trials. Of course, I'm not saying those are the right NITs. This needs to be determined. This needs a little bit more work. But I think that the study was futuristic in a way or another.
And now, back to Roger.
We hope you've enjoyed this recording. If you have any questions or comments about the content of this conversation or the entire episode, please send an email to questions@surfingnash.com. The next 3 weeks will be devoted to previewing and then covering the Paris NASH meeting and the EASL NAFLD Summit. September is a brutal month for travel schedules and, as a result, podcast scheduling. We'll be using some hybrid episode designs, and both Jorn and Louise will miss some episodes. I'll be here for all of them. It will be a challenge and a bit of a wild ride for me, but if you know me by now, you know I love a challenge. So stick with us as we move through the month. If you're in the U.S., enjoy Labor Day. Wherever you are, enjoy the transition to what we hope will be more temperate weather. Stay safe and surf on. We'll see you on the podcast. Bye-bye now.